I sincerely believe in a people's ability to rise above any and all situations when given the proper information about their plight and condition. If learning the truth of our plight and condition could not liberate us, then white oppressive forces would not have spread so much disinformation throughout the black communities to prevent us from learning the truth of our plight and condition. If you sincerely believe that our plight is connected to a religious book written by our proven most ungodliest enemies, and if you believe that our collective mental condition is caused by a Willie slave syndrome myth, it's because you are in fact ignorant of your own ignorance. It's time to learn the truth of our plight and condition. More specifically, it's time to learn the true reason why many black people now participate in our own demise and defends the system of white supremacy. When people are born within a system that's designed for their gradual demise, they will normalize that system because it's the only system they've ever known. And because they've normalized that system, many will even also participate in their own gradual demise. Case, point, and proof. Because we African Americans were born within a system designed for our gradual demise, we now unwittingly participate in the mental enslavement of our own children. Most African American parents sends our children to white governed schools with the main expectation that they receive good grades. But that's an expectation that only works for white parents, because the school's curriculums is designed only for the benefit of white students. For most black students, their schools are in fact the places where they first experience the implication that there's something lesser or wrong about being black. This is because the school's educational curriculums have been whitewashed to falsely exalt whites and to falsely marginalize blacks. This white exalting, black marginalizing curriculum is being pumped into the impressionable young minds of generations of black students without being counterbalanced by an equal amount of positive black racially affirming information. Consequently, black students must constantly resist the negative perceptions of being black implicit in an educational curriculum almost exclusively dedicated to white achievements, white contribution, and white history. Furthermore, black students are subjected to this demoralizing miseducation for 7 hours a day from the ages of 5 through 18. Clearly, considerable damages can be done to the self-esteems of many black students within such a large time frame. And what's extremely disheartening is witnessing black school principals and black school teachers participating in this mental abuse of black students. The reason why black school faculty members participate in this mental abuse of black students is for the same reason that black parents does so. Because black people are born within this system of mental enslavement. Therefore, we've normalized it. And therefore, we are psychologically blinded from seeing what's being done to our children. Here's what's actually being done to our children. The white educational system's failure to adequately provide black students with a racially affirming curriculum as it does so for white students is essential for maintaining white social dominance over black people. Because for a ruling class to maintain its position of social dominance over its oppressed population, they must condition the oppressed from a very early age to accept their subordinate status and to adhere to the authority of the dominant culture. To do so, the education given to the oppressed population from the time that their minds are young and most impressionable must be the type that exalts the dominant group and denies them of a racially affirming education about themselves. When the oppressed population are given an education that exalts the dominant group and are denied one that affirms their own racial group, even the brightest among them have little of any hope of mentally extracting themselves from their assigned low dominant position in life. This immoral social engineering practice is precisely what's being done to Black students. During the educational development of Black students, they are literally being subconsciously conditioned to perceive themselves through a false inherent subordinate identity and to perceive Caucasian through a false inherent superior identity. Doing so instills a value system into the collective subconscious minds of Black people that makes us adhere to the authority of the white society. To restate it more simply, it makes Black people more compliant with white dominance over our lives, and in many cases makes us even prefer it. Schools are tools of the government designed to mold a student's character accordingly. Although the white government publicly professes equality for all of its citizens, it's actually unrelentingly committed toward the preservation of its nation's white social dominance over its Black population. This commitment necessitates that Black people be socialized in ways that meet that objective. If the white government did not do this to Black people, it would then be diametrically opposing its own commitment. It's also how the white society protects itself from massive unified Black retribution. The white government will never provide Black people with an education that truly liberates us. It's against the government's interest to do so. The government will instead always miseducate us in ways that serve the system of white supremacy. Our core problem as Black people is that most of us cannot see that our minds are being systematically manipulated to think in ways that serve the system and white supremacy. Therefore, we cannot see our mental change. Because Black people have been born within this system, most have normalized it and therefore cannot see our mental change. Black people have also been trauma bonded by the white society. Usually the term trauma bonded refers to a gaslighting mental abuse that occurs within individual abusive relationships, wherein which one partner is manipulated and mentally abused by the narcissistic partner. Within this scenario, after repeatedly brutalizing the victim, the narcissistic abusive partner never acknowledges any of his wrongdoing. He instead minimizes the abuse and tells the victim that it wasn't that bad. Just get over it. Shut up. It wasn't that bad. You're exaggerating it. He then constantly inundates the victim with demoralizing, disapproving narratives about the victim. This is continued until the victim stops focusing on the abuse that she endured and instead focuses only on the demoralizing, disapproving narratives. This shifting of focus towards the abuse causes the victim to, instead of resenting the abuser, they instead seeks the approval of the abuser. This trauma bonding response provides the abuser with a more favorable outcome that's better than having the victim resenting and hating him. The human mind is easily manipulated when the victim is unaware of what's being done to their minds. It's a well-proven gaslighting tactic. Likewise, the same trauma bonding manipulation tactic is what white social scientists and white propagandists have done to the Black masses. After the white society brutalized Black people for many centuries, the white society never acknowledged any of their horrible wrongdoings. They instead minimized it by saying that the abuse wasn't that bad, or that slavery benefited us. They tell us to shut up, get over it. They then constantly inundate Black people with Black racially demoralizing, devaluing, and disapproving propaganda about ourselves. Therefore, rather than resenting the white society for their brutal mistreatment of us, many of us instead tries to win their approval. Many Black people go out of their way to try to show white people that we're not all bad. Most Black people don't even know how our minds got this way because we think it's Willie Lynch. Black people are unknowing victims within an abusive relationship with a narcissistic white society. And just like within most abusive relationship, They convince many black people to believe that their mistreatment of us is our own fault. It's a psychological mind hack. The minds of large targeted populations are quite easy to manipulate if they're unaware of what's being done to them. Once minds have been confused, manipulation becomes simple. The mind will even ignore common sense, and rationality falls away, even overlooking hypocrisy and deception. The white society also mentally enslaves black people by perpetually demoralizing us. They constantly subject the black population to receiving only the fraudulent, worst possible narratives about ourselves. Doing so demoralizes the black population to such an extent that we begin to doubt our own abilities to govern ourselves and believe that we therefore need white people to govern over our lives. Moreover, that we believe that we're better off living under white dominance, and therefore we abandon all hopes of ever liberating ourselves. This fraudulent propaganda campaign also demoralizes us, divides us, creates black self-loathing, and shifts black collective aggressions away from the white oppressive society and redirects it towards and against ourselves. It also attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. The oppressed will always believe the fraudulent worst by themselves. That's a quote from Frantz Fanon. This is the truth of our plighted condition. This is not some dictum peddling, as so many of you have been programmed to respond. It's the absolute truth of our plighted condition. Black people are the unknowing victims of the worst and most successful gaslighting mental abuse system in world history. Until we break the monopoly the white oppressors have over our minds, liberation is not only impossible, it's unthinkable. And that's a quote from Neely Fuller Jr. When you've heard the truth, and you know deep in your soul that it is the truth, and you still reject it, and you still don't act upon it, it is then that your soul truly begins to die, because it's then that you know that you are mentally enslaved. It is time to accept the truth, function based upon the truth, and liberate ourselves.